Hello and welcome to the Tuesday, January 28th, 2025 edition of the SANS Internet Storm Center's Stormcast. My name is Johannes Ulrich and today I'm recording from Jacksonville, Florida. Well, today we have a diary by Jan looking at one of his favorite topics, and that's how attackers are bypassing phishing filters. The common trick being used here is often referred to as z-wasp for zero with characters. And there are a number of different spaces, non-breaking spaces and the like that are often used here that are invisible to the user, but a machine looking for keywords like password would not recognize those keywords because they are broken up with these special characters. Particular character that Jan is looking at in this example is the softhyphen, which is why Jan dubs this particular version of the attack the C-shy attack, where SHY is the HTML entity being used for the softhyphen that is then included in these emails in order to obfuscate them and make them similar to these zero white space and other zero with characters, readable to the human, but not readable to the machine. Interesting technique, and what this really drives home is that yes, we have fancy filters for our email messages that try to identify spam, but a sufficiently motivated attacker is probably going to figure out a way around this because there are just so many options to make a text look very different to the machine compared to the user. And Apple today released its usual updates for everything. So we got updates for Vision OS, iOS, iPadOS. We got updates for macOS going back 3 versions to Ventura or macOS 13. We also got updates for watchOS, tvOS, and of course Safari for these older versions of macOS. Probably the highlight of this particular release is that there is one already exploited vulnerability that's being patched with this update. It's the first 0 day of the year for Apple, but of course it's just January. And I think this is the first or second update that we got period this year. This particular already exploited vulnerability is a privilege escalation vulnerability in Apple's core media framework. This is essentially the library or the set of libraries that's responsible for all kinds of media processing, with that, of course, a common source of vulnerabilities. The Apple description is, as usual, fairly sparse. It says here, and I'm reading from Apple, a malicious application may be able to elevate privileges. Apple is aware of a report this issue may have been exploited against versions of iOS before iOS 17.2. So if you already ran a current version of iOS, you should be good and should not be affected by this vulnerability. Still update, and of course, with that, make sure that you also apply all these other updates that are included. For iOS and iPadOS and the other operating system other than macOS, there's no update for prior versions yet. So with that, of course, you have to also accept any feature updates that you may receive with this particular operating system update. And watchTowr released its usual in-depth review and exploit instructions for the latest Fortinet FortiOS authentication bypass vulnerability. Pretty interesting vulnerability. Essentially what Fortinet did here is that it did provide a proxy to a local telnet session via WebSocket. And that essentially allows a user to gain terminal access via HTTP requests. Authentication, of course, isn't really done properly. There is a race condition where you can authenticate before the authentication request comes in, resulting in empty authentication succeeding, and that gives you then essentially full command line access via this WebSocket connection. Interesting vulnerability, definitely something to look at if you are working with WebSockets and do similar things where you are proxying WebSocket connections and relying on some form of authentication across this connection, so you're not running into the same type of race issue that we had here with Fortinet. In another updates, we got an update for GitHub Desktop that fixes 4 different vulnerabilities. There are some credential leak vulnerabilities. Actually, the one vulnerability I thought is kind of interesting is not the most severe one. CVSS score only 6.6, but a malicious crafted remote URL could essentially lead to credential leaks. Interesting kind of exploitation options here, and probably one that's a little bit hard to get a handle on how critical it's really in your particular environment. And Apache released a noteworthy update for Solr, fixing 2 vulnerabilities. One of them is a directory traversal vulnerability, and then also an interesting one that allows untrusted users to overwrite trusted config sets. And in the end, this could also end up with arbitrary code execution, so definitely apply the patch. And this is it for today, this week, teaching virtually here for our Cybersecurity East conference. Thanks for listening, and talk to you again tomorrow. Bye.